It's Matt Kirkner, your host for the Tech Ed Podcast. We are live all week at the International Manufacturing Technology Show, the largest and longest running industrial trade show in the entire Western Hemisphere. And that is a lot of the globe. That goes all the way from the middle of England to the Prime Meridian. So the largest show of its kind. Tremendous numbers of people here all week. We've seen over 12,000 students now come by the booth here at the Tech Ed Podcast, getting inspired and excited about amazing careers in industrial technology, in manufacturing and machining, and so on. And we're learning all about new technologies, over 15,000 new technologies on offer here this year at IMTS. And so we're going to do a little bit more learning about new technologies and about a great organization. The organization is called the Advanced Functional Fabrics of America. Unfortunately, they call that AFFOA, so I won't have to say that over and over and over again. We have that organization's Director of Education and Workforce Development with us. His name is Richard Feistman. Richard, thanks so much for coming on the Tech Ed Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's my first time at this conference, and I'm really excited to talk about AFFOA.
So the first time at IMTS, you've never been here before, huh?
Nope, first time, just learned about it this year.
What's your impression so far?
It's amazing. I've been in a lot of education-based conferences. That's my background, and the fact that I can work with thousands of students in a short period of time.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you can get in front of this many students and get them excited about just this incredible advancements in technology, and I know you're in and around that, Richard, every day of your life. So start out by just telling us a little bit about AFFOA. What do you do? I know you're one of the Manufacturing USA Institutes, so we're familiar with that model, but tell us about your specific institute.
We're looking to revitalize the textile industry
by
using advanced fabrics and fibers. And so basically what that means is we're trying to create an industry that is making your t-shirt act like a cell phone.
Wow.
We embed sensors on the fiber level and then put those fibers into all sorts of clothing. We're a Department of Defense sponsored institution, so we do a lot of defense work, but we're also trying to expand it out to commercial. And when I'm bringing students in, I'm mainly trying to show them this exciting combination of lots of technology in a very old industry.
You know, it always blows me away how many different convergences in technology are taking place. We talk all the time on the Tech Ed Podcast about the way smart technology, smart sensors, smart devices are totally revolutionizing the world of manufacturing and have been now for several years. It's part of the reason that we have so many new technologies here at IMTS. So I think about smart sensors as a photoelectric sensor, an ultrasonic sensor, a vacuum sensor that we're placing on a piece of manufacturing equipment in order to gather data. Of course, smart meaning that they have their own embedded intelligence. They can make decisions on their own and the ability to communicate with other sensors and devices. So you're telling me that we can actually take sensors and place them in fabric and in clothing?
So what we do is if you go to our website, you'll see a lot of LEDs, but that's because you can at least see the LED inside the fiber. But anything that is a sensor, we can embed into there. So whether it's motion, whether it's temperature, whether it's physiological monitoring, all sorts of fascinating pieces. If you can put it on a microchip, we can get it inside that fiber. And the only thing that determines the thickness of the fiber is that sensor. So when you start out with it, you sometimes can get bigger ones, but as it becomes something useful, smaller, 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 until these are fibers basically floating in the air.
So give us a couple blow our mind applications of this. You embed a sensor in a t-shirt, in a piece of clothing, in a fabric. What are some of the applications?
Sure. One of our earlier pieces was we put some physiological monitoring, which it monitors heart rate and oxygen in your blood for paratroopers. And basically it's in a headband, so that way if someone's up in a plane and they're about to jump out, if you have low oxygen, you're going to pass out. So this way the person in charge can look at that tube that say, hey, your oxygen's a little low, don't jump out of there. And it's fascinating. So you have lots of physiological monitoring that way. We also do fascinating pieces for long module pieces of fiber that can go, say, under the ocean, because everything's automatically waterproof because it's encased in plastic. And so you could monitor changes in temperature, salinity, pressure, chemical, any type of thing that can sense something you can put into there.
That's absolutely incredible. I honestly had no idea, and I'm sure your imagination just runs wild at your institute, right?
As being based in education, it's the best part. I can take them on a tour either virtually or at Cambridge, show them amazing pieces. We have a hat that modulates light that can read that light and bring your voice back to you. And so we can just amaze students, and then we show them that and then say, hey, what do you want to do with it? We have lots of curriculum where they can then explore it and then figure out what they want to do.
Cambridge, Massachusetts, right? So you're right, really in many ways in the heart of kind of engineering education, right? You've got MIT right there. You've got Harvard not too far from there. So lots and lots of great, obviously very well-known Ivy League schools. But a lot of the work that you're doing is in getting young people excited about this technology,
Very
right?
much
Tell us
so.
about that.
Yep, we work with 150 organizations in 30 states, and what I'm basically doing is I'm looking for a school that's interested in doing something, connecting connecting them to somebody within our network and how we can move that to advanced fibers and fabrics. And it can be anywhere across the country, and we just sit there and try to inspire and then let them be creative.
So what does that feel like for the school? So you come up with this, or they come up with this idea, you're connecting them to, I'm assuming, some form of a technology company or an employer of some sort, and working on these projects. How does that manifest itself in the education process?
Mm-hmm. So what usually happens is, for example, we've been working a great deal with Greater Lawrence.
Okay.
It's a vocational school outside in Massachusetts.
Got it.
And so what they're basically doing is they'll come, and we have what we call the AFF curriculum, Advanced Functional Fabrics. And what they do is they get inspired by what's going on, but then what gets created is they get a prototype for an end user. So our most recent use, the teacher gets to choose the end user. And so the teacher decided to use people that are experiencing the Ukrainian war right now.
Okay.
And so they picked a variety of aid workers and a variety of whoever might be in there. And so they got, for example, if you got a 5-year-old who's a refugee, the students get to think of something. So things they thought of was like a self-heating teddy bear that a kid can clutch onto to make them feel better, or a jacket that you could filter water through, or anything that, maybe it's one student did this great piece where she wanted to help nurses out. So she made a nursing cap that if it sensed the tension in your brow, it would play some music. So we get students all the time that think they're bad at math. They'll say, I don't like math, but I like this. And so we can say, no, this is you. You can integrate aspects of engineering and STEM work into any of your careers, and we want to try to turn those eyes towards us.
I think then that's really one of the many ways that the whole world of education has changed over the course of the last 5 or 10 years, and more understanding of, number one, the incredible value of hands-on kinesthetic experiences. And I was never a good classroom learner. Learning out of a book, sitting in a classroom, that was never my thing. But when I could actually engage in an activity, go to art class, go to gym, whatever it is, and be active, that was the way that I learned. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that until long after my education pathway was completed. Are we doing a better job in this country, do you think? I certainly do, of getting young people into hands-on kinesthetic experiences?
There is starting to be a turn back to the idea that it has to be real. It has to be something a student enjoys. It's no longer that this has to be you. This has to be what you do. You have to read this book and figure it out. We found out that doesn't work for 2/3 of students.
Okay.
And so we have to have some sort of active process that kind of gets those creative pieces, that gets them into the environment. I think we're doing a better job, but there could be a lot more progress in that realm.
So that's interesting, and I hadn't heard that statistic before. And if you happen to know the source, we'd love to put it in the show notes, or if you want to share it with us later. Do you know where that?
Well, what I'm getting at is only basic. The education system is designed around undergraduate education, the idea of getting people into a college.
Right.
And if you have, if you put down the whole education, all those students in the world, in the United States, say it's just 3 of them, of those 3, only 2 of them go to college, and only 1 of them actually graduates. So 1 out of 3 students has an undergraduate degree. What are we doing with those other 2? And that's where we get the problem of, well, obviously a system's not working if 2 out of 3 aren't getting the end goal.
Right.
Rather, the end goal should be an enjoyable living wage experience in the work world.
Exactly.
And that's what we're trying to do at AFFOA as well, is show, what are you interested in? How can we craft curriculum around what you need to make you have an interesting future? And that's what we're going for. Something in manufacturing, something in creativity.
I love that. When your education experience, what level and what were you doing on the education side, and then how does that influence the work you're doing now?
Oh, when I was an educator?
Yes.
So I started out as a middle school teacher in New York City.
Okay.
I was a social studies teacher. I loved it out there. I started really getting into, the systems of education. I saw bright, excited students that one holistic thing would go wrong in their life and everything goes bad. And so I really got interested to how do you tweak those systems to make things better. Eventually I went back to school to understand education systems better.
Okay.
I started working for the Department of Education in New Hampshire, and eventually I got into education nonprofits. So recently I've been with AFFOA, and it's that specific idea of one of the first programs I created was a holistic kind of program for teen parents, with the idea that if you can get teen parents to get a high school education, you get their diploma, if you can give them living wage work experience and some chance to become warm, involved parents, you can't take that away from them no matter what.
Right.
And so the same idea goes with AFFOA, that if we can get you living wage work experience, get you excited in a career, once it's real, students will do everything. They see what it actually is. It's not I'm trying to calculate something in a book. It's like, wow, I can get this amazing fiber to make shoes that can tell me where I am in the world, or it can tell me if I'm running correctly, or I can make this beautiful thing. It's amazing.
So let's take that a little bit further. First, a couple of things. Number one is it's amazing how many people we've talked to this week at the Smart Forest Student Summit who were classroom educators and for whatever reason phased into some other really fascinating opportunities similar to what you're doing. So a message for anybody thinking about education, in as much as stepping into manufacturing, you've got all these options. If you're going the education path, that you certainly have all kinds of options as well. So that part of it is really, really fascinating to me. Just an observation, but. To go a little bit further on these career pathways, we're talking all week about career paths and how important it is to get these 12,000 students that are walking by the Tech Ed Podcast studio here this week an understanding of all the different opportunities for them. What are some of the career opportunities in advanced fabrics?
So in advanced fabrics, you can kind of go any direction that kind of suits your interests. Like there's the traditional textile industry. There's lots of room there if you want to learn how to use the machining. There's a variety of need for computer science of actually operating and programming the machines. There's a lot of automation coming out now.
Okay.
But it's also the other side of it. If you're interested in electronics and you're interested in programming, there's a ton of embedding of sensors, reading of sensors. If you're interested in fashion and design, also works, because that's the important part about textile world. You can't just have something that's functional. It has to be something that you want to touch and feel if it's going to be on your body. So we have a great program, for example, where we take undergraduates in FIT and have them come together with undergraduates in MIT and create amazing products. We call it our Industry Challenge. They usually
FIT stands for what?
Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. Yep. Okay. And what they do is you have engineers and designers coming together. They don't often work together.
Sure.
And we want to replicate this across the country. We've been talking to several other schools that have these kind of siloed departments that we want to work together and create amazing things.
Okay, that's interesting. We had the chancellor of the University of Wisconsin, Stout, on with us about a year ago, and she had the idea, and a lot of people thought it was a little bit odd, but they placed their basically their fashion design program in the same building as their engineering program with, I think, the same thesis. In a lot of ways, those overlaps. So just another example of convergences. We think about like the OT-IT convergence in manufacturing, where operations technology is really overlapping now with IT. And you're talking about actually having traditional engineering overlapping with the fashion industry and with design. Tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from the students that are engaging and what they're learning from each other.
What the students like to see is it pops that creativity. They get to talk to people they never get to talk to, because sometimes, especially once you get post-high school, you end up kind of getting in a track.
Sure.
And you end up just talking to those people. But what's fascinating about advanced fabrics is you end up having electrical engineers, talking with fabric technicians and fabric engineers, talking to material scientists. I love going into my job because we have a daily stand-up where I get to hear people from across the spectrum talk about amazing things. There's these prototypes that go on either for the military or for commercial industry,
right. And
it's great. I sit there and talk to my kids, and they're like, the what then the what?
Right.
I have this thing that can read this. I can help a person that's jumping out of a plane. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and really doing a lot of good. I mean, some of those examples that you were talking about, it's not just, how do you create a really cool looking t-shirt, right? Mm-hmm. You're talking about things like, human safety in the case of the paratrooper,
yep.
Human lives in the case of the examples from Ukraine, so doing tons and tons of good in the world and in the classroom. And I want to talk a little bit more about the classroom. You mentioned your the curriculum development and some of the curriculum that you've worked on. Tell us about the learning opportunities, the learning experiences, and a little bit more on the education initiatives.
Mm-hmm. So in our education side, we try to go across the board. We go all the way from early childhood education to late career. Our goal, and so what we're showcasing here, we're often looking at our STEM kits. So we try to sponsor various groups to do. We want to act as an intermediary for the education space.
Sure.
There's a lot of amazing things out there. So what we're trying to do is bring forward those that are doing something interesting.
Okay.
So we've brought out SOE, who has kind of a space-based advanced fabric STEM game.
Okay.
That you have to take an astronaut and get them from Earth to Mars, basically.
Okay.
And what you're doing is you're interacting with a variety of electronics and sensors, and it won't work until you've done your sensor connection properly. So it's this amazing kind of game that's getting you into the industry, and that's meant for lower grades.
SOE, her name?
SOE. Sew it yourself. You can think about it.
Okay, got it. Yep.
And that's a group comes out of Nautilus Defense, who's a member of our ecosystem as well. So AFFOA does a lot of organizing of a variety of groups.
Okay.
We also have an advanced STEM game for high schoolers that's specifically looking at the fabric industry, that's looking about how constructing masks and gloves and whatnot. It's by Ministry Supply, and it's by a non-profit called Bajika.
Okay.
And we're actually working with them to make those advanced fabrics. So how do you include electronic elements? How do you include some of these elements that try to make something even more functional? And that's the STEM kit world. We also do it with, as I mentioned, the curriculum world with the secondary schools, where we have a whole advanced manufacturing curriculum that we give away, and we just say, hey, as a teacher, the last thing you want is be given a canned curriculum. So what we say is, pick the pieces you want, we'll modulate it for you, we'll make you sure it works for you, and they can kind of take any element. We also work in the college ranks where we're trying to, that's what MIT and FIT program does, where we're trying to inspire different groups to work together. And then also in the education space, we do worker upskilling, which is something else we do where we try to integrate systems. We've done it in North Carolina and Massachusetts to try to make sure that workers are going into the textile industry and advancing as needed.
Another convergence here on the Tech Ed podcast when you're talking about getting a person, getting a human being from Earth to Mars. We had astronaut Don Thomas on the other day, and he was talking he's a space shuttle astronaut actually, and talking all about the eventual, actually he's a believer that we'll put men on Mars at some point in the future, which is just fascinating. Isn't that crazy?
You can get a little astronaut figure piece to get on Mars if you play Zoe, so
there
that's
you go.
awesome. I love to hear it.
Yeah, we'll have to walk over there. And any other things you're showcasing in the booth? You hit on a number of them.
The biggies in the booth is just exciting for all this type of technology. I've talked a lot about our active electronic technology, but we've also worked with people in our ecosystem to do passive technology.
Okay.
So, for example, we worked with a material scientist who had a fiber that they could put to do slow release of chemicals.
Okay.
And what's interesting is we worked them with a fabric engineer, and they created a sock. And this is available on Amazon. And this is a sock that you can put on, and it slow releases capsaicin, which is icy hot, basically.
Okay.
It goes into your ankle, works for 150 hours, can wash it 10 or 12
Wow.
times. My educators that walk by just want it. My father-in-law loves it already.
Yeah,
so
right.
it's an interesting little piece of, it doesn't always have to be electricity. It can be these passive elements that just kind of help people out.
Yeah, you think about it. I was a swimmer in high school, and they used to, if you had a shoulder injury or whatever, and that stuff it smelled like a piece of peppermint gum.
No
and,
more
right?
goo.
Yeah, exactly. And then you walk around school, and everybody's saying, "Dude, you smell like my grandpa," right? So now you have this.
What was the other one? Yeah, Tiger Balm was the other one.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, yeah, and Atomic Bomb was the third. All three of those. So I mean, it really is, and we joke about it, but I mean, just those advancements are absolutely crazy. Have you had some time to walk around IMTS this week, Richard?
A little bit, but it's been really fun. So it's not, as I mentioned, I'm usually at education or academic conferences. So
Right.
when you get to see a giant thing lifting a car in the air or
Right.
robots all over the
Yep.
place, there's this robot dog running around at the end of the day that always catches my eye.
Sure.
It's the classroom thing. I keep thinking of students running around.
Yeah.
But nope, it's a robot dog running around.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
So,
amazing.
Yeah, to paint those two pictures, and we've had actually senior leaders of both of those companies on the Tech Ed podcast this week. Mike Chico was with us yesterday. He's the president and CEO of Fanuc America, and to your point, they've got just this gigantic robot that is, I mean, listeners have to picture that this is picking up a Corvette.
It's crazy.
Off the ground and moving it all over the place. I was at Fanuc about 3 or 4 weeks ago with a couple senior executives from some companies in Wisconsin. In one case, a gentleman who had sold this company to another large OEM for like $8.5 billion, so some pretty heavy hitters. And they were blown away by that same display with the robot picking up the vehicle. So that's just absolutely fascinating. We also had the industrial sales leader for Boston Dynamics, which is the robot dog, the yellow one that you've seen running around, and all those amazing applications. And you see that technology converging with the kind of things that you're doing. It's just been such an incredible week at IMTS. So if I'm an educator and I want to get a little bit more involved with the work that you're doing, Richard, how do they plug in? How do they get involved with that process?
Well,
look like?
you can always just Google AFFOA, AFFOA, and you're going to find me at the Education and Workforce Development. My email is rfeistman, which is tricky to spell, so you might just want to Google AFFOA.
Right. Yep.
And you'll find us there. But we work across the country. We'll work with any district, any school. It does not need to be a specific type of school. My only interest is what's going to inspire some students to do something a little different, a little interesting, and the fabric industry hits at so many different levels, we'll find something.
And is it a STEM program, usually technical education? Where are you usually getting
It's
involved?
usually going to be probably like exactly say career and tech ed groups, but we can work with any group that's doing like Title I funding, 21st century funding. These are all the educational funding lines that are interested in inspiring students, and so we can bring any type of kind of career connection to a student, whether it's in the elementary level or the secondary level. And
I've got 2 more questions for AFFOA's Richard Feistman. The next one has to do with from an education standpoint. If I'm the student, how long is that process? And, what am I going through? How am I interacting with maybe the sponsor company and so on? And so touch on that, and then also on the workforce side, do you have a lot of industrial employers that are now coming to you needing to learn this technology as well?
So on the student side, the experience really comes down to what how the school wants to set it up. So the curriculum is very piecemeal. It can be an entire semester, or it could also just be a singular experience. When we do our prototype challenges, they usually take a month or 2.
Okay.
And so a lot of times the students will first get some sort of experience with the AFFOA technology, then they start developing pieces along the way, and then there's usually a showcase. Our last showcase in Lawrence had 250 community members come out and just see this amazing new work that the students created.
Okay.
But sometimes there's other groups, like we just worked with a group called Cambridge STEAM, and that was an internship process. So
Okay.
they'll come to us maybe for a day. They get to shadow our subject matter experts. Sometimes it's a week. We really do want to craft it to what makes the most sense. So sometimes, even if it's just me coming in for a 30-minute, here's some stuff, here's some very interesting things you can do, or whether it's a whole week or a semester, we kind of craft whatever's needed.
Fantastic. So great experience for the students, and then on the employer side, you've got the title workforce right in your title, the word workforce right in your title. Are you seeing a lot of employers that are looking to skill up in this area too?
We see there's a lot of need. So what we're seeing is we have a lot of interaction on the systems level to help 2-year universities work with 4-year universities, work with workforce boards, work with employers. That's
Okay.
where we're at. But individual employers are so strong trying to find workers that a lot of times it's just conversations of what you need. One of the interesting things about the textile industry, it's very specific to employer. And so one of the things we want to do is make sure if you're working a very specific machine, it might be used in a very specific way for that company.
Okay.
And so one of the things we want to do is partner with any employer that's looking for people, and we'll help them connect them for recruitment and train up as needed. And so we're just kind of open to those conversations.
Fantastic. So, Richard, you've got all this experience, right? You spent all the time in the classroom. You're doing some really cool things outside of the classroom now, but still intimately involved in education. One of the questions we love to ask every single one of our guests here on the Tech Ed podcast is, if you had one piece of advice for a high school sophomore, 15, 16-year-old student, what would that advice be?
My advice would be is explore, explore, explore. No one really has it figured out. Everyone thinks everyone has it figured out but themselves, but they don't. And
Right.
so it's okay. Find something that's interesting, and don't limit yourself. It's not that I'm bad at math. Like, never let that be the thing, because once you
Right.
find something you like, you will be good at it. And it's important to know that it's something you enjoy and you find interesting. When I talk to teachers and I'm talking to them, most of the time when you have a teacher, it's not that they love English, it's they love working with students. So
Yep.
you got to find the thing you like and make sure you train up for that. So
Yep.
if you enjoy students, you can always improve your English pieces as a teacher, but you really need that starting point if you want to work and train, educate, and help students out.
Sure.
And so the same goes when I'm trying to give advice to students, is find something that's fun. It's okay if it changes. Just go for that now. You don't need to know 20 years from now. Just know what do you want to do right now, and we'll help
Absolutely.
you get the skills to do it.
You and I are both examples of that, right? How many
Mhm.
career changes have you
Yeah.
been through in your lifetime?
Many.
Yeah.
You always like to say it's linear, but there's many dots that you're just making more of a regression line
Yeah,
to.
exactly.
Yeah.
And my career's been exactly that same way. And I've
Mhm.
really had, like, if you classify careers, 3 different careers, and not just like 3 different companies, 3 different totally different jobs, and really in some ways none of them had anything to do with the other ones.
Exactly.
But
Not
there's
till they
always
look
that
at you.
common thread. Yeah, exactly. And
Yep.
that's what life is all about.
Mhm.
Richard Feistman of I'm sorry,
That's all right.
of the Advanced Functional Fabrics of America, AFFOA. I keep tripping over that.
It's a long one.
Over that name. Absolutely. Just a great conversation with you this morning, and had so much fun on the Tech Ed podcast. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you having me.